Hi, so I'm Lucian Tarnowski, founder and CEO of BraveNew. We're a San Francisco-based company that powers collaboration communities for the enterprise and for foundations. We basically facilitate a culture of integrated cooperation, really helping different organizations, different stakeholders come together around a shared purpose and rethink how they collaborate. And we do that by creating these knowledge networks of these expert networks where we map all of the knowledge that's being consumed on an individual basis, and we help organizations tap into that and create essentially like a hive mind, a global brain, you can think of that as. So I'm going to jump more into BraveNew, but I'm going to start with a bit of a story about how we got to where we are today. So I thought I'd start with Plato. It's a good place to start. Plato said about what is the purpose of education. He said, the purpose of education is to give the body and the soul all the beauty and all the perfection of which they are capable of. And I think we often miss this, that really what we're trying to enable is that innate human potential. And we really believe we're at a unique moment in history where now we actually have the infrastructure to tap into people's unique potential, not only from a context of them as an individual, which is often where we think about. We hear lots of presentations about how do we optimize the individual at work, but more interestingly, how do we optimize the collective? Because ultimately we can learn a lot from nature with how ecosystems will interact to help make each other stronger. We get our strength through numbers, and I think when it comes to problem solving, we know that we're not going to get there individually, yet the system that we currently have massively incentivizes this winner-takes-all situation where it rewards competition over cooperation. And ultimately, this is what we're actually trying to change. So if that's Plato's view of education, I would say that education, the formal education system as we know it, is failing to achieve its purpose. The reason I say that is when you think about human capital as an asset class, it's unquestionable that of all the world's assets, it's the least least optimized. That of all the world's human capital, we are scratching the surface on what we have capability for. And this is where technology can come in and play an enabling role, play an infrastructure role in changing that. I believe that communities are a way to do it, and I'll share why. So this is my father here, this is me as a child. My father got contracted polio in the 50s and spent his life in a wheelchair. And what he realized at the age of 28, spending the rest of his life in a wheelchair, he realized that 10% of the world's population were in some way handicapped, physically handicapped or any other form of disability. And he realized that the vast majority of those people didn't work because they weren't able to access their communities, and therefore they weren't seen as productive members of the community, and therefore they were deprived of dignity and that self-respect. So he set about, he did the world's largest study of vocational education between 1964 and 1967 and covered 100,000 miles in his wheelchair. The reason I share this, he helped set up a community in India that's now the world's largest community around leprosy and disability, where we focus on training employment skills. This was my childhood home. So I grew up with this amazing sense of community and seeing the power of community to take people into employment, into lifelong employment. So the question I asked was, how can I take that model? How can we bring that online and give people the ability to learn from each other in that same community context? Because personally, I believe that communities have been how we always make sense of the world. So Tom Friedman called us the Airbnb of human potential. Now that sounds great, but what he's getting at is if you think about Airbnb, there was an asset class that was underutilized, people's apartments. People had spare rooms in their apartments. There was an underutilized asset class that people didn't really think about as an asset class. Airbnb came along and gave you a way to make money out of your spare room, out of your couch. Think about what would be the equivalent of doing that with human capital. If we think about human capital as an asset class, and we think about people in the context of their overall contribution to these communities, this is where we're getting at. So we power these knowledge-sharing collaboration communities for the likes of GE, Lockheed Martin, Institute for Healthcare Improvement, Mercer, a variety of corporates and foundations. And really our sweet spot are big multi-stakeholder collaboratives, where you've got a lot of different organizations coming together around a shared purpose, and they're trying to collaborate around that shared goal, often around some form of social impact. As I said, people have always made sense of their world through the communities they belong to. So how can we tap into this need to belong that people have? Because I really believe that's where we can tap into people's collective potential. And personally, with the whole machine age, future of jobs, automation happening, we need to stop thinking of people as individual workers and start thinking of people as collectives. Because otherwise, the fastest way to get automated is as an individual. So let's look at some of the communities that we power. We really focus on three major use cases: health, education, and workforce. As you can, I did say three major use cases. So I'll give you an example of a health community we power. Institute for Healthcare Improvement has a community with us called 100 Million Healthier Lives. That community, we gather together 600 different healthcare systems representing 100 million American patients, and we help those healthcare systems share new innovations, share best practices, share data, share insights, so that they can lift the innovation of all the others. Education Reimagined, another community called Pioneer Lab, where we bring people from all across the K-12 education system to try to shift the system to a learner-centric model. Military Connect, it's the largest community on the web for transitioning veterans, started by Lockheed Martin, where we help US military vets transition from the military into civilian jobs, access mentors, access each other, providing that feedback. So Stan McChrystal talked about this notion of team of teams and going from silos to ecosystems. And this is really what this is about. How can we think about this talent landscape as an ecosystem and be able to bring each individual into it and be able to use data to understand the individual capabilities of those individuals? So I'm going to wrap up here. Really, this is bringing the 70-20-10 model into a peer-to-peer learning environment where we're really empowering the learner. And ultimately, I love to finish with this. Education is what people do to you. Learning is what you do for yourself. So how do we unleash our collective potential to solve our great challenges? Thank you.